So this is the second novel that we are going to discuss. For your ordinary level examination, there will be only one novel. So you should get ready to write answers only from one novel. That is more than enough. You don't have to write answers, or else you don't have to study two novels. But it is better to give some kind of understanding about the second novel as well, because then you will get some kind of understanding. If you feel that, okay, Vendor of Sweets is difficult to understand or else difficult to answer, then there is some kind of an option, right? That is why I have selected this particular novel, right? Okay, so, right. So, right, we will start from the very beginning. So we are going to discuss the chapters. We are going to discuss the novel chapter-wise, and then we will write the teacher's note, and then we will highlight all the important paragraphs and quotations. This particular novel is little bit difficult to understand because of the language, right? So the language is very much difficult to understand. So you have to pay your attention very carefully for certain words, right? So you have to write down all the vocabulary, otherwise you won't be able to understand the story, right? Because when it comes to this particular novel, unlike Vendor of Sweets, you have a lot of difficult words, right? Certain words are actually belong to archaic language. So nowadays we are not using those words in modern English. So you may feel a little bit unfamiliar with the language, right? So I hope that you have bought the book. Make sure to have the book with you. And the themes and the characters are a little bit different from the previous book that we did, Vendor of Sweets, right? So that book is much more modern. It is actually a modern story, and this book is a little bit traditional story, or else a kind of a classic, or else a masterpiece written by Mark Twain. So before going to the story, we will pay our attention towards the writer. That is something very much important. So this particular book is written by Mark Twain. So Mark Twain is known to be one of America's first and foremost realist and humorist writers, right? So Mark Twain is actually very much famous from his pen name. His pen name is Mark Twain, but his actual name is something else, right? Samuel Clemens can be taken as his actual name. So he actually wrote from his pen name called Mark Twain. He actually wrote using that particular name. So his pen name is very much important to us, just like the writer Hector Hugo Munro, right? He used the name Saki, right? Saki. So likewise, certain writers, they did not write their real name. They did not write from their real name. They did not appear from their real name. Instead of that, they used a pen name. So this particular writer is also using a pen name, Mark Twain. So when it comes to his books, he is very famous as Mark Twain, but his real name is actually Samuel Clemens. So he lived between 1835 to 1910. Usually wrote of things he knew about from first-hand experiences. So most of the stories actually written by Mark Twain, he wrote all these things from his own experiences. Now, when it comes to a story, in order to have a plot, in order to write a story, first and foremost, you have to have an experience, right? That experience will become a plot, and then there will be a novel or a short story. So writers will get experience in several ways. Sometimes they will get first-hand experience, right? They will experience something by themselves, or else they will get the experience from other people. So when it comes to Mark Twain, actually, Mark Twain has gained almost all the experiences by himself. So that is something very much important that we have to highlight again. So I have mentioned that one as well, right? I hope you guys can see the screen. Usually wrote of things he knew about from first-hand experience. He did not refer to the experiences of other people or else his friends and all, right? He wrote about the experiences which he knew by himself, faced by himself, right? Two of his best-known novels typify this trait, right? Typify means represents this idea, because he wrote most of the stories by himself. In his Adventures of Tom Sawyer, right? That is what we call the masterpiece. That is what we call the masterpiece written by Mark Twain. So Mark Twain is actually recognized by people from this particular book, right? So what is the book? A very famous book by him, Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Twain immortalized the sleepy little town of Hannibal, Missouri, the fictional St. Petersburg, right? So he lived in this particular town nearby the Missouri River. So in most of the stories, he has mentioned about this background, right? He has mentioned about this background. He used to work. He wanted to be a pilot actually in his life, but Unfortunately, he couldn't become like that. So he worked in several ships, and then he paid his attention towards writing. So the sleepy little town of Hannibal, Missouri, the fictional St. Petersburg, as well as the steamboats which pass through it daily, likewise, in Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Huckleberry Finn also another a very famous story by Mark Twain. So in both these stories, actually, he has mentioned about his personal experiences, right? I have given you the places where he lived, actually, the town called Hannibal and the Missouri River, right? So he used to work as a, he did several jobs, Mark Twain. He did several jobs, even though he wanted to become a pilot. He did not get that chance. And he used to, what do you call, work in these steamboats as well, right? And after that, he gave up and he came to writing and he became a very popular writer. So, however, whatever the experiences that he gained in his life, in his immediate environment, in his neighborhood, right, all these things he actually included to his two masterpieces. They are known to be Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, right? Written after the Prince and the Pauper, right? So Huckleberry Finn is actually written after the Prince and the Pauper. So Prince and the Pauper written before that, right? The various characters are based on types which Twain encountered both in his hometown and while working as a riverboat pilot on the Mississippi River, right? So I told you he did a lot of jobs. So he actually worked as a steamboat pilot, riverboat pilot in Mississippi River as well, on the Mississippi River. So what we can understand here is that Mark Twain, most of the stories actually written by him, most of the novels actually written by him, he used his personal experiences. And even in this particular story, we can find a lot of personal experiences that is actually undergone by him. And this is some kind of understanding about the novelist. Then we will move on to the story and then we will understand the characters, right? So hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message if you have finished. We can definitely complete the novel. So some students may be doing this novel in the school. So don't get upset. Definitely before the exam, we are going to cover this novel as well. We can do that, right? So please make sure to participate for the class, right? So some students are not actually following Vendor of Sweets. I'm telling for those students, right? If you have the grit and stamina to cover, yes, you can definitely cover, right? What you have to do is participate to the class continuously. That is what you have to do. Complete your notes. Teacher's note is very much important, right? So please make sure to participate for the class. Please write with a sense of responsibility. This is a new novel, so you are going to cover more than 25 marks from the novel, right? So even though we have completed Vendor of Sweets, there may be some students who do not like to write answers from Vendor of Sweets. So this will be a great chance, right? So take the maximum advantage from that, right? So what are the things that we discussed under Mark Twain? Mark Twain can be identified as a very popular American writer, but he used his pen name Mark Twain. His real name is Samuel Clemens, right? So he used to work as a riverboat pilot near the Mississippi River, right? As a young boy. So after that, he gave up his job and he came to writing. And when we refer to him, basically most of the time, whatever the books actually written by him, he used personal experiences, right? So he used his personal experiences when it comes to his writing. On the other hand, you have to remember the two masterpieces, right? They are known to be the Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, right? So these are the two books actually written by him. So Adventures of Huckleberry Finn is actually written after The Prince and the Pauper. The Prince and the Pauper is the prescribed novel for us, right? So, but most famous novels are Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, right? Those two can be taken as the most famous novels by him. So this type of knowledge is very much important, Puta. The reason is that when you have some knowledge about this particular writer or else the author, you can very easily write the introduction, the introductory paragraph, right? You can very easily write the introductory paragraph. So in order to cover the introductory paragraph, some information about the writer is something very much important, right? So please make sure to cover that. In your schools. You may have done this actually, right? In some schools, they are following Prince and the Pauper, right? But we completed Vendor of Sweets. So this is actually the extra work, right? This can be identified as extra work because we have already completed the novel. We have discussed more than 10 target questions covering the entire novel, right? So after that, we started our second novel. I need 5 students to complete. Please pass me a message. Is there anyone who is still writing? Shall we move on? If you have finished, please pass me a message. Puta, hurry up. If you have finished, please pass me a message. Right. I hope you guys have completed. I hope you have a considerable understanding, right? It is, yeah, I think you can. I think you can. It is actually a selection. I think you can, but most of the students, they don't write like that. So we have a question here. She is asking whether we can write the context question in Prince and the Pauper and whether we can write the essay type question from Vendor of Sweets. That is up to you. But most of the students, they select only one novel, right? You can write like that. Or else you can select any other novel that you like. It is up to you, right? So whatever said and done, you have to actually follow only one novel. One novel is more than enough to write answers, right? You only have to follow one novel. That is it, right? Okay. Right. So we will move on to the story. I hope you guys have completed. Is there anyone who is still writing? Right. Okay. So I hope that you guys have completed. We will move on to the next part. So we are going to give the introduction to the novel. So make sure to write down while my explanation is continuing, right? So I will not give extra time to write. Yeah, that is enough, sir. That is enough, Razima. That is more than enough. Vendor of sweets is more than enough. That is enough. I'm just teaching this because like we have completed vendor of sweets. Otherwise, we are wasting our time. We can learn something more, right? We have already completed vendor of sweets and we have done more than 10 target questions. Uta, we are wasting our time. We should not do like that. I don't know. Some students may following Prince and the Pauper. How many of you are following in the school Prince and the Pauper? Raise your hand. How many of you are following Prince and the Pauper? Two. Only two students. Right, okay. So they can get the maximum advantage from this. Even others can follow. This is important, Puta, because like if something happens, we don't know, right? I don't tell that something will happen, but if something happens, then you have an option. Anything can happen, right? Anything can happen. So if something happens, you have an option, right? Then you can get ready from this novel as well, right? So Tom Canty, the youngest son of a very poor family living in Offalcourt, located in London, has been abused by his father and grandmother, but is encouraged by the local priest who taught him to read and write. So there are basically two main characters, right? There are basically two main characters, just like Jagannath and Mali in Vendor of Sweets. Here also we have two main characters. The first character is known to be Tom Canty, right? So Tom Canty, the youngest son of very poor family. So his family condition, right? Financial condition is quite clearly mentioned here. Living in Offalcourt, right? Located in London, has been abused by his father and grandmother, but is encouraged by the local priest who taught him to read and write. So he is the protagonist character, Tom Canty. We discuss about him. Most of the story is actually based on him and the king, right? So the prince, I'm sorry. So Tom Canty is a kind of an innocent boy. He is actually what has happened to him, right? Abused by his father and grandmother. So father is a drunkard. So father is actually continuously abusing this boy and asking him to go and beg, for him, right? So they are like beggars, right? The family is actually very much similar to beggars, right? Encouraged by the local priest, but there was a very good priest, like a positive character. That particular person always encourages him to learn and teach him to read and write. That part is important, right? Teach him how to read and write. Loitering around the palace's gates one day, loitering means he is walking here and there because he has some kind of ideal dream to become a leader, or else to become the prince, or else to become the king, right? In his subconscious mind, he had a dream. Who had a dream? Tom Canty had a dream. In his subconscious mind, even though he is a beggar, even though he is a low-class boy, right? From in his subconscious mind, he always had the idea to become the prince, or else to be the king of the country, right? So as a result of that, he was always loitering around the palace gates one day. He sees Edward Tudor. Edward Tudor is the next character, right? Another protagonist character that we are going to pay our attention. Edward Tudor, the Prince of Wales, right? So he is known to be the Prince of Wales, right? So he's a prince, right? So England is actually categorized into several countries like Wales, and then you have Ireland, then you have England, right? So basically three categories. So collectively we take that United Kingdom, right? If you take them collectively, we call United Kingdom. So Wales is actually identified as a separate state, but if you take them collectively, it is known to be United Kingdom. But Wales can be identified as a different country. Scotland can be identified as a different country. Then we have England, right? So Prince of Wales, coming too close in his intense excitement, Tom is caught and nearly beaten by the royal guards, right? However, Edward stops them and invites Tom into his palace chamber. So one day what happened? Edward Tudor is inviting Tom. He saw Tom actually loitering here and there, walking here and there, and Tom was actually caught up by the royal guards. When they were about to beat him, right? Edward Tudor said that, no, you should not beat him. Why don't you come to my palace? If you want to see the palace, you can come and you can observe, right? Edward stops them and invites Tom into his palace chamber. the two boys get to know one another and are fascinated by each other's lives. So two lifestyles are different. Where Tom Canty is having a very much suffocating lifestyle, right? Where rampant with violence and poverty. Whereas Edward Tudor is actually having a very luxurious life, right? He's having a very luxurious life, and his lifestyle is actually amazed by from his lifestyle. Tom Canty was amazed, and Edward Tudor is also amazed from the Tom Canty's lifestyle, right? Because both of them were not exposed to that kind of lifestyle. Now, if you take Edward Tudor, he is not exposed to that kind of violent, uh, what do you call, abject poverty, miserable situation in his life because he is a prince. On the other hand, if you take Tom Canty, even he has not exposed to that kind of luxury. So they explain their life and their experiences and everything. So both of them are fascinated with their lifestyles. Both of them are fascinated with their lifestyles. They have an uncanny resemblance to each other and learn they were even born on the same day. So they decide to swap clothes temporarily, right? So uncanny resemblance means from their physical nature, right? They were very much same physically, right? The complexion, the face, the nose, and the eyes are very much similar. And what do they do, right? They change their clothes, right? They change their clothes in order to check what will happen, right? So they do it as a joke, right? They are the two boys, get to know one another and are fascinated by each other's life. They have an uncanny resemblance to each other and learn that they were even born on the same day. What do you mean by uncanny resemblance? Uncanny resemblance means like very much connected, very much what is the word we can call? Very much similar, very much equal in nature. Very much equal in nature. That is the idea, right? And learn they were even born on the same day, right? So they have a very great connection. They were born at on the same day, right? And which the reader later learns is the great seal of the prince. Sorry, the prince hides an item, right? So the prince means Edward Tudor. Edward Tudor actually hides. What is he going to hide? He is going to hide the great seal of England, then goes outside to confront the guards who abused Tom. However, dressed as Tom, he is not recognized by the guards who drive him from the palace. Now, what happens actually, they have changed their identities. So their identities were based on their clothes. So now nobody can actually recognize them. They do it as a joke, but Edward Tudor is a very much intelligent person, right? So he hides the Great Seal of England. What do you mean by Great Seal of England? In order to prove that you are coming from a lineage or else a royal family, you have to have that seal. Even today, USA, UK, and most of the countries, the president will have that seal, right? That emblem should be there, right? So before, what do you call, moving out of the palace, Edward Tudor hides that particular seal. So then they have changed their clothes. Now nobody can't recognize them. Now Tom Canty has become the prince and the prince has become the beggar, right? That is what actually happened. So we can see mistaken identities. Now they have shifted their identities, right? Then goes outside to confront the guards who abuse Tom, right? However, dressed as Tom, he is not recognized by the guards who drive him from the palace, right? So what did the guards do? They actually send away Edward Tudor, who is actually who is wearing the clothes of Tom Canty. So even the guards they misunderstood that, okay, from the clothes we can clearly realize he's a beggar. We will chase him away, right? So what did they do? They chased Edward Tudor away. Now Tom Canty is inside the palace. He was a beggar. Now he has changed his identity. Now he appears to be the prince. So hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message if you have finished. Others, please hurry up. Please pass me a message if you have finished. Okay, students, now what actually happened now? I hope you guys have completed, right? So what are the two major characters? Tom Canty and Edward Tudor. Tom Canty is known to be a boy who suffocated a lot because of his poverty. His father and grandmother abuses him. His mother and sisters actually always helped him. And most importantly, we should not forget about the priest. The priest actually taught him how to read and write. Even though he is a poor boy, from his subconscious mind, right? One day he wanted to be a king. One day he wanted to be a prince, right? In his subconscious mind, you can use the word ambition, right? He had the ambition of becoming the king or else the prince. One day when he was loitering near the castle, what actually happened? Uh, Edward Tudor saw him and he asked him to come, and they exchanged their ideas, they exchanged their views, and then what happened? They identified, okay, we have very much uncanny resemblance, and we were born on the same day, and we have so much different lifestyles, right? I have a very much luxurious lifestyle, whereas your lifestyle is very much suffocating. So I want to get that experience. Why don't we share that, right? We will share that experience. So that was the decision actually taken by the Edward Tudor, and before changing their clothes, Edward Tudor actually hid the most important Great Seal of England in order to prove that one day, if he wanted to prove that he is the real king, so he should have to have that, right? So now Tom Canty did not have any idea whatsoever what is this seal. So that seal is something very much important, because if you are going to be a king one day, right, from the princehood to the king, what will happen? Definitely you have to provide that Great Seal of England. That is something important. So, however, they have changed their identities, they have changed their clothes, and now Edward Tudor is outside the castle and Tom Canty is inside the castle. Nobody has recognized them. Now they have changed, they have shifted their lifestyles, and they were actually changed by their outer appearances, right? So we will discuss about that later when we start reading. So today we are going to get some kind of basic understanding, right? Some kind of summary about the particular novel. Okay, very good, my dear students. We will move on. Tom, dressed as Edward, tries to cope with the court customs and manners after being mistaken for the prince. Now what happens? Now the situation is very much difficult for Tom Canty as well, because he is not used to all these royal customs and traditions, right? Like Edward Tudor. Now he feels it's a little bit difficult to understand these things. On the other hand, even Edward Tudor faces number of troubles and tribunals outside the castle, right, on the streets, different types of challenges. His father and grandmother continuously abuses him. So he's also facing number of problems, right? So it clearly shows that doesn't matter what kind of luxurious life that you enjoy, problems can be always there, right? So we will give some kind of literature analysis after completing this paragraph, right? Edward's father, King Henry VIII, his fellow nobles, and the palace's staff think the prince has an illness that has caused the memory loss and fear he will go mad. Now what has happened? So Tom Canty cannot understand all these customs and traditions and royal regulations. So Tom Canty, Edward Tudor's father, that is actually the King Henry VIII, and all the other noble members of this court, they think that, okay, this particular boy has gone insane, right? He can't remember anything related to the royal traditions and customs. So now you can understand the situation. I don't have to explain. Very simple situation, right? The prince eventually finds, eventually means gradually, little by little. The word eventually means gradually, little by little, right? The prince eventually finds his way through the streets to the Canty home, where the Canty family believe him to be Tom, right? So now you can understand the Edward Tudor is actually now appearing as Tom. So however, he found the Tom's house, and then Tom's family members are actually thinking that this is the real Tom. But we know that this is not the real Tom. This is Edward Tudor, Prince of Wales. There he is subjected to the brutality of Tom's alcoholic and abusive father. I told you, right? Tom Canty had an abusive father. So there he was subjected to different types of suffocations and different types of brutalities, right? From whom he manages to escape and meets Miles Hendon, a soldier and nobleman returning from war. Another important character, Miles Hendon, a soldier and nobleman returning from war. Although Miles does not believe Edward's claims to royalty, he humors that and becomes his protector. So Edward tells the real story because Edward believes this particular person is actually returning from the war. What is his name? Miles Hendon. So he explains the story, right? So Edward Tudor explains the story. This is what happened. I am the real Prince of Wales. So that particular person is actually not believing that because it is very much hard to believe, right? So that is kind of a story that very much hard to believe. So nobody will believe definitely, right? That was the idea. So he says, okay, whatever said and done, I will protect you because you are a small kid. So definitely I will provide you protection. Right? Meanwhile, news features them that King Henry has died and Edward, actually Tom, is now the king. Okay. Tables are going to turn, right? So now they get a message, right? Meanwhile, news features them that King Henry has died and Edward, who is the Edward? Tom. Now Tom is inside the palace, right? So Tom is going to be the king of um, that particular country. So now tables are turning, right? This is not something that they expected. So Tom is going to be the most powerful person in the kingdom. And this is kind of an ambition that he always wanted to achieve. So this brings some kind of problems to Edward Tudor because he never expected this kind of incident. But now he has a triumph that is actually, he knows where is that seal. So if he can provide that seal, definitely everybody will realize that this is the real prince, right? But now, unfortunately, what has happened, fortunately or unfortunately, now what has happened, Tom is going to be the king of that particular country. So I hope you guys can understand. Hurry up and write down the story in a nutshell. Right, I need another 2 students to complete. Pudha, hurry up. Right, okay. I hope that you guys have completed. Now we will move on to the next part, Pudha. We are still discussing about the summary. As king, Tom is repeatedly asked about the missing Great Seal of England. Now, Tom did not know anything about this seal. Can you remember the seal? Who actually hid that? Right? Edward Tudor. Right? So Tom did not have any idea whatsoever about this particular seal. Right? He doesn't know about this particular seal. Right? So as king, Tom is repeatedly asked about the missing Great Seal of England, but he knows nothing about it. However, when Tom is asked to sit in on judgments, his common sense observations reassure them his mind is sound, right? So he was checked. He was checked whether he is insane or not. But later they realized that no, he is not in a mad position or else kind of an insane character. No, his mental position is very much normal, but he doesn't know anything about this royal seal, right? The seal of England. As Edward experiences the brutal life of a London pauper firsthand, he becomes aware of the stark class inequality in England. Now, this is one of the major themes that we discussed. So, when Edward Tudor, when he had that luxurious lifestyle as a prince, he was not actually aware about this social classes, the class problem, what kind of troubles and tribunals faced by these beggars, what kind of troubles and tribunals faced by these poor people. He didn't have any idea whatsoever. But soon after, he became a person who represents that particular class with the help of Tom, obviously. Then what actually happens? He identifies from first-hand experience, okay, there is life like this. There are certain situations in this particular country. There are certain set of people in this particular country who faces this kind of terrible problems. Until that particular moment, just like Kumar Sangakkara, if you can remember the story, right? Where Sangha says, I played my cricket, my children went to school, right? Soon after the Lahore attack, only he realized that some of our fellow Sri Lankans for more than 30 years, they were suffocating from this particular problem. So there was a new respect and awe for their courage. Our same idea is here. So Tudor actually lived a very much luxurious life. So soon after he shifted his characters with Tom, what actually happens, he identified the real suffocation of these people. He identifies the inequality, the class difference, right? He identifies them all, and from there, a lot of problems he understood, right? So this is what actually the most important part that you have to understand, right? Sometimes the people who are in the high class, they don't realize what kind of problems are actually faced by the people who live in lower class or else middle class, upper middle class, right? So they didn't realize. Now, this is a great chance for Tudor to understand, okay, they face this kind of problems, right? So that's what we have explained here. As Edward experiences the brutal life of a London pauper firsthand, he becomes aware of the stark class inequality of England. In particular, he sees the harsh, punitive nature of the English judicial system under which people are burned at the stake, pillared and flogged. So he understood that the brutality of the judicial system of England, he understood these things, right? He will never be able to understand these things if he lived under those particular circumstances. Now, soon after he became pauper, right? Pauper, which means a beggar, he realized that, okay, the system is not good, right? So this is what you have to understand, right? Until you become one of them, you will not realize the suffocations actually faced by them. So here, this is very much highlighted, right? So soon after, in particular, especially, he sees the harsh punitive nature of the English judicial system, right? People are burned at the stake, pillared, and flogged. He realizes that the accused are convicted on flimsy evidence and branded or hanged for petty offenses, and vows to reign with mercy when he regains his rightful place. So he understood that some of these accusers, they have done very small mistakes, but they were given very harsh punishments. He understood that. So don't forget, he is the next king, right? He is the prince who is going to be the king, right? So this is something very important to him in order to understand the system of the country, in order to understand how to control the country. This experience, this exposure is something very much essential to him. More than Tom Canty, definitely this kind of exposure should be given to him because he is about to be the king. That is why, right? So when Edward declares to a gang of thieves that he is the king and will put an end to unjust laws, they assume he is insane and hold a mock coronation, right? So he says that I am the king. One day I will definitely bring an end to this, right? A set of thieves, right? They got together and they have beaten him. So he faces number of problems. Now you can understand both these children, they face number of crucial circumstances in their settings, right? So Tom Canty does not understand all these traditional and royal settings of how to behave in that type of society. On the other hand, Edward Tudor faces number of brutalities due to his appearance, right, as a pauper. This is what you have to understand. So hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Right, I hope you guys have completed, right? We will move on from there, right? Okay. So now both of them identified what kind of troubles and tribunals that they face in their own settings. After a series of adventures, including a stint in prison, Edward interrupts the coronation as Tom is about to be made king. So Edward did not like that, right? So Edward interrupts that, right? Because Edward could not actually bear the torment. So Edward did not like the coronation as Tom is about to be made king. The nobles are shocked at their resemblance, but refuse to believe that Edward is the rightful king, wearing Tom's clothes until he produces the great seal of England that he hid before leaving the palace. So finally, what actually happened, my dear students? Tom is actually cannot provide that particular seal. So Edward is actually providing the Great Seal of England, and then people have to believe that this is the real king. Edward and Tom switch back to their original places, and Edward is crowned King Edward of England. Miles is rewarded with the rank of Earl and the family right to sit in the king's presence. In gratitude for supporting the new king's claim to the throne, Edward names Tom king's ward, a privileged position that he holds for the rest of his life. So Edward Tudor is not actually a wrong character or else a negative character. He does not forget about Tom as well. As you can see here, he respects not only Tom but also Miles, where Miles is rewarded with the rank of Earl and the family right to sit in the king's presence. In gratitude for supporting the new king's claim to the throne, Edward names Tom king's ward, a privileged position that he holds for the rest of his life. The ending explains that although Edward died at the age of 15, he reigned mercifully due to his experiences, while Tom lived to be a very old man, right? The ending explains that although Edward died at the age of 15, he reigned mercifully due to his experiences, right? He ruled the country for a long period of time. He did not, even though he did not rule the country for a long period of time, for the small period of time that he ruled it with a lot of mercy and a lot of respect. And Tom lived to be a very old man, right? That is the end of the story. So hurry up and write down. Now you know the idea of the story. Now you know the summary of the story. So then we have to decide the characterization. Then we have to write about characterization. Then we have to understand the characters. Then we have to pay our attention to the themes. These are the things that we are about to discuss. So hurry up and write down. Right. Okay. So this is the story. I hope that you guys can understand the entire story, what happens in the story. If you have finished, please pass me a message. Puta, is there anyone who is still writing? Please pass me a message. Now, this is a new novel, so you have to follow from the very beginning. Please make sure to read the first paragraph. In some schools, they may have done this. So read very carefully. There will be a lot of difficult words to understand. Make sure to follow them as well. Huh? That is important. Right. Okay. So we will move on to the characterization, right? We will stop from there. Introduction to the characters. The first character is Edward Tudor, Prince of Wales, the main character. The prince referred to in the title of the novel. Having spent his entire life in the confines of the royal apartments, he has daydreamed about the freedom experienced by boys such as Tom Canty. So he always wanted to become a boy like Tom Canty because, he used to live a very luxurious life. So in his life, he always wanted to become a boy like Tom Candy to experience a lot of freedom because he actually lived inside the court with a lot of regulations and royal traditions and with a lot of security. So he wanted to explore life, right? So he always expected to run away from the court and that is what he did actually at the end of the day, right? So but soon after he understood that the troubles and tribunals faced by these innocent kids and the society, right? So once he became a pauper, he realized that that is what you have to understand here, right? Okay, so hurry up and write down. Please pass me a message. Right, okay, I hope you guys have completed. So we will write about Tom Canty as well. So from here, we are going to wind up the session. So next week, we are going to start in chapter number 1. Tom Canty, the other main character of the novel as a pauper's son, he has been brought up in one of the most disreputable parts of London and has spent much time daydreaming about living the life of royalty. Right, he always wanted to live a life of royalty, I told you, right? So he enjoyed that. So his dream actually came true. For a certain time period, his dream actually came true. So this is what we discuss when it comes to the Tom Canty's life, right? So we discussed about the main two characters. We discussed about the entire story in a nutshell, what happens in the story. So we have read all these paragraphs and then we have discussed, then we have realized about the importance of these themes and everything. So we will discuss about them as well, one by one, and then we will go to the story. So if you have finished, you can leave the meeting. Thank you so much for joining. The recording will be available tomorrow.